Welcome to Living in the New Covenant, a daily podcast from In-Depth Studies. I'm your host, Paul Honeycutt, joined by Geoff Volker. Our topic today is, what does it mean to be unequally yoked?
When I hear someone talk about, that we are not to be unequally yoked, I would say that 99% of the time when I hear this, it is said speaking to the fact that a believer is not to marry an unbeliever. And of course I believe that is true biblically, but I would go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, the whole chapter that addresses marriage, divorce, remarriage, and you get down to verse 39, the next to last verse, where it says, a woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord. So that's so I think that issue that a believer, if they're going to marry or remarry, they have to marry another believer. That seems to be cut and dry. The question is that in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, where the quote, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, that's where it's found. So let me read a little bit, just the context, beginning at 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? That's a false god. Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. And I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. The key phrase in this section is come out from them and be separate. Now, the key to understanding this passage from my perspective is that the overall context of 2 Corinthians is that the Apostle Paul is being attacked by false apostles. And so he's defending his apostleship throughout 2 Corinthians. So when we come to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, and we have the statement, come out from them and be separate, he's referring to false teachers. He's referring to that believers are not to entertain false teachers. You are to separate from them. And the reason why I think this doesn't apply to a marriage between a believer and an unbeliever. So let's say we have, for argument's sake, a marriage between a believer and an unbeliever. Is the believer to separate, to divorce from an unbeliever, as a result of marrying an unbeliever? And we would say no. 1 Corinthians 7 says that as long as the unbeliever wants to stay in the marriage, it is legit in God's sight, and the believer is not to initiate divorce as long as the unbeliever wants to stay in the marriage. So once we understand this, then we come to 2 Corinthians 6, we say, well, wait a second. Paul is telling the Corinthians to come out from them and be separate. Well, that cannot apply to marriage, because that would put it in contradiction to 1 Corinthians 7, which is also the teaching of the Apostle Paul. But that would make sense if the context, which I think it is in 2 Corinthians, false teachers, come out from them and be separate. So when we're talking about the command, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, we're not talking about marriage, though it is true that believers are only supposed to marry other believers. But this particular context of this phrase refers to putting or withdrawing from false teachers. For that is the context of 2 Corinthians chapter 6.
If you'd like more information about this topic or anything else regarding New Covenant theology, go to our website, ids.org, or contact Geoff directly at...
My cell phone number is 480-313-8558, and my email address is volker.jeff@gmail.com. Just remember the Jeff is a Geoff.